Hey everyone, my name is Lizzie and today I'll be teaching you how to make gluten-free beer. I recently had a class and one of my students was saying that I should avoid everything gluten, and beer, what it is made of is malt, and malt has gluten in it. So what is gluten, you might ask? Gluten is a protein found in barley, rye, and wheat, and what it does, it makes food stick together. For example, let's take pizza dough. Once you add gluten to a pizza dough, it makes it stretchy, it gives it that gluiness so the dough does not break apart. And what malt is a sort of grain, and it comes from barley. Barley is seed, and the barley or the seed that you get from the plant is transformed into malt through the malting process. What is the malting process? The malting process happens when barley is transformed into malt, and this is done in three main steps. First, we need to wet the barley. And once the barley is wet, sprouts are going to start to come out, and this is called the germination process. What's the germination process? It's when a seed gets transformed into a plant. However, we do not want to have a full-on plant. We need to stop this plant from growing and dry up the barley and heat it up. And heating up the barley will produce the final color and flavor of the malt. You can get malt by purchasing malt, or you can get powdered or liquid malt from the store if you do not want to carry heavy grains with you. And that's currently what I use. So I asked different home brewers if they prefer all grain brewing or if they prefer liquid malt extract versus powdered malt extract, and it's a mixed bag. Some experienced home brewers prefer grains because it gives a better taste to the beer. Other brewers would prefer the liquid or powdered malt option because it's faster. And what I have here, I'm going to show you a liquid malt extract. So what this looks like is molasses and honey mixed in one. It has a sort of gluey texture. And what it is, it's consistent and it's dark. And I've tasted this. It has a little bitter flavor. And it's also found in a powder form. And the powder form is right here. This is the powdered malt extract. And what I use in my recipe for beer, I use either 1/3 of this jar for 1 gallon beer, or I use a full pack of the powdered malt extract to make your beer. However, what you can do if you do not want to use malt is to use sugar, replace it by any sugar, white sugar, yellow sugar, brown sugar, because what the malt is, it provides the sugar for the yeast to eat. Therefore, if someone you're making beer for is gluten-free, I would suggest to replace these products with either molasses, sugar, honey. But one thing you have to do for beer to have that flavor is to add the hops. Hops, what they are, they come from a plant and they're super bitter. So when you taste the bitterness of a beer, just note that it comes from the hops. And I use 3 hops initially. What I do is I boil these 3 hops for 20 minutes after adding the malt. So the first part is that I would add the malt, or in the gluten-free case, the sugar. And for the sugar to add, you can add, depending on how strong you want your beer to be, I would add roughly 3 cups for a 1 gallon brew. If you'd like it to be stronger, you can add more sugar or more pounds of sugar based on your preference. And once the sugar is added, I would add 3 hops into the boiling pot, boil it for 20 minutes, and once the 20 minutes is up, then I would add another batch of 3 hops and boil that for 10 minutes. And once the boiling is done, then my wort is ready, and that's when I would cool it off and add the yeast at the end. And for the yeast that's used, I've used EC 1118, which is a wine yeast. I've used that in a beer recipe, and to my surprise, it still tasted like beer. However, if you really want to make sure that you use the correct yeast, you can use Kvite or ale yeast. They are found also in store. And for the ale yeast that I use, in the back of the package, they ask to have a starter. And what a starter is, it's when you put yeast in water first to make sure it activates. And once it activates for 5 minutes or more, then you pitch it in your batch of homebrew. In other words, what you can do, you can add water and make sure that the water is warm, because at the back of the package, the optimal temperature will be roughly between 26 and 35. It's a different temperature in every yeast package. And once you have that temperature, make sure that your water or your starter is at that temperature. So when you add the yeast inside the water, it'll be in a pleasant environment and ready for all the sugar it's about to eat. And while we're at it, we'll also try to avoid natural flavors, which are sometimes written in juice. These aren't squeezed fruits. These are extra elements that they add in juice. So if you want to avoid natural flavors as well as avoiding gluten, you can avoid these ingredients in juices, and you'll see them on the box. It says natural flavors, so you want to avoid these type of juice to make sure you have a healthier homebrew experience. One thing you have to really be mindful of when choosing these juices is to avoid preservatives, because I've been trying to master the red wine color, and so far all the juices I've used have preservatives. Therefore my fermentation starts, and then the preservatives bring the yeast to a halt and the fermentation gets stuck. Therefore the final gravity is never at 0.990 or 1.000. There's always a bit of sugar that's left, and the alcohol ends up being sweet and does not taste like dry red wine or even sweet dessert wine. It's too sweet, and this means that there's a lot of sugar left for the yeast to consume. So a solution for this is to sing preservative-free on top of the box, or just using other flavors. For example, I bought a cherry sauce that has preservatives only at the end of the ingredient list. Therefore, I trust that the top part, which are the most prominent ingredients of this cherry, the top part has no preservatives, just like the apple juice that I've used when I make my cider. The apple juice has preservatives at the bottom of the ingredient list. By choosing this cherry, I chose an ingredient that was red and that had preservatives at the bottom of the list only. Therefore, these preservatives will not affect the yeast in its homebrew. And for tips and tricks on how to make alcohol ferment till the end, book a class. The link is in the description below. And if you found this video valuable, share with a friend. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.